Welcome to the webinar. Borderless beats the Latin sound from regional success to global dominance webinar. Let me do a quick introduction to our panelists. First, I have Anana. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Anana?
Yes, hola a todos. Yo soy Anana Love, la directora de membresía con Open on Sunday. And I've been working at Open on Sunday for about 5 years. I've looked at over 500 catalogs and helped acquire over 100. So, catalog space is my bread and butter, and I'm excited to speak with everyone here. Some great panelists here who I've met, and looking forward to talking about some Latin music.
All right. Zulma Oviedo.
Hola, hola, aquí Zulma Oviedo, Puerto Rico y Colombia en la casa representando. Somos una compañía de distribución y realmente de servicios ampliados para artistas mayormente independientes, aunque también damos support a aquellas disqueras que a pesar de que tengan deals con multinacionales y estén necesitando de servicios administrativos, estamos para ayudar. Creemos en que todas las personas con las que trabajamos son innovative y that's the name of the company, the Innovative Company, aquí para servirles.
All right. Alexiomar.
Saludos familia, my name is Alexiomar Rodriguez. I'm a music and entertainment lawyer. I help artists, rights holders, and investors close music deals faster. So we help them, sign their first deal, or if they're buying or selling a catalog, we're there with them, helping them even if they're in the US, Spain, or Latin America. That's what we do, help our clients close deals faster.
And Rob Velez.
You mi gente, Rob Velez with VEVO, been with the company 7 years. I am the Vice President of Network Sales Strategy, which includes all of our US Hispanic and diverse audiences, as well as Latin America. And my job is to help brands connect with diverse consumers to make sure that they are hitting their objectives as part of their campaign.
Welcome. And yours truly, JC Gonzalez. I've been in the industry for over 35 years. I think I'm the old man in the room. Done purchasing, opened up music stores when they existed. Head of sales at Universal and Univision, as well as worked at independent distributor Selector Hits, and I still work with innovative people as of today. So done sales of catalogs just as well as Anana, and as well as negotiated artist deals. So with all the majors. So that's basically my background. Well, let's start with some quick numbers, and then we're going right into the questions. Just to get everybody excited, just to give you an idea, the Latin population in Latin America is 659 million. And out of that, 211 million are from Brazil. So that brings it down to 448 million Spanish-speaking people. Only that does not include Portugal and Spain. That's just Latin America. US is 340 million as of the last census. And out of those 340 million, 65 million were Latinos. Okay, 19% of the population in the United States are Spanish, which is kind of an impressive number. And if you add that to the 148 million Spanish-speaking of Latin America, it's just an impressive number. And just to give that idea, let's add it to music, which is what we're talking about. Latin music represented for 2024, according to the IRAA, $1.4 million. Is the only genre that has had any consistent growth for the past 9 years and outpaced the actual general market by 5.8% last year. And as of 2024, Latin music represented 8% of the U.S. market, 8.1%, of the U.S. market. When I was working in physical, it was only 3%. So it's grown, and it continues to grow. So with that said, let's start our first question, which says our opening question, which is, what has fueled the explosion of Latin music globally over the past decade? And how are you seeing that growth translate to revenue? Rob.
Oh, great. Thank you. And I appreciate all those stats. So I think you hit on a few things there that have contributed to the explosion that we've seen within the Latin music in the US and globally as well. Not just the US, but we are seeing also trends globally. But let's start with what's happening here. The growth of the population of Hispanics in the US, already up to 65 million, about 20% of the total population. But also, the technology has just gotten so much better in terms of being able to discover music and consume music and content in a way that we've never seen before. I mean, literally, things are at everybody's fingertips in order to, watch the content and the artist and their music videos that they want. You no longer have to wait in line at Tower Records to, buy the record or the cassette, or wait in front of your television watching MTV to watch your favorite artist or their music video, if they even played it, right? Today's world is very much on demand and it's very consumer centric. So therefore, the access to the artist and their content has never been as high as it ever been, right? Like in today's age. So streaming has obviously played a big role in that. You have many different streaming providers, but now, at least with VEVO, the connected television space has now also introduced a new layer to that on-demand appetite, being able to watch, music videos in your living room across the biggest screen, which are now available across also different streaming platforms, has also helped fuel the demand for Latin music, right? But then also, if we think about music in general, the cross-genre collaboration and having big name artists from general market partner with Latin artists has also been something that we've attributed to that growth, right? So like a few examples of that, Karol G and DJ Tiesto, or Rosalia and The Weeknd, or what about when J Balvin came out and you have Beyonce, collaborate with him and do a remix. So I think there's so many different factors that are playing into it, but I think overall you can't deny that Latin music is here to stay and it continues to grow.
100%. And I'll add to that, and I'll go to the next question. And it comes from the physical side. When I was at Universal, Daddy Yankee was just signed to us, and La Gasolina was coming out. And I was the first guy, actually, I admitted on screen that I said, what is this? This and I was from the heavy rap and reggaeton, so La Gasolina to me was like bubblegum at that point. And I was like, this is not going to be a hit. And look, so don't trust me on A&R, by the way. So the song popped, and at that point, Universal US signed Yankee. But Universal Mexico was a different region. And Universal Mexico had their priorities, and they did not want to release the album. So La Gasolina was a battle to be released. That album in particular, we had to fight for Mexico to work it. Today, with digital, you're live everywhere. And that's what has changed in a big way. Those borders have just gone. They do not exist. You could tackle every single market. So at one shot. And you could pinpoint those markets because now the numbers, the analytics are very, very fact driven. So you could see those numbers happening. So that's my story about the Yankee, and don't trust my A&R. But let's go to our next question. And this is a Zulma question, by the way. From your perspective, is Latin music a single market, or should we be talking about multiple regions and cultures with these economic realities?
Definitely, because of that, we are definitely multiple markets with distinctive cultural differences and economies. So everyone has their ecosystem, even when, in a way, those borders that you mentioned before had dropped. There's still a lot happening regionally in every territory. So just to keep it short, definitely it's still many markets within this whole big Latin market.
Rob, and with VEVO, because that's something that you guys target, and it's worldwide. How do you what are your thoughts?
I mean, it's it's definitely a global market. I don't think it's no any longer just a single market or niche market thing. I mean, if we look at just like look at the Latin genre just to begin with, it literally pulls in from all the different Hispanic backgrounds that people represent, right? So like you have, within the Latin genre, you have regional Mexican music, right? And that hails obviously a lot of that music and rhythm from Mexico. And then you have bachata, right, which is born in Dominican Republic, and that pulls in, those Hispanic audiences as well. And then you have the other ones, whether it's Latin pop or Latin rock or, merengue, whatever, all these different Caribbeans and Latin America and all these different, it pulls it all together under this Latin genre. And so therefore, like, because of what we just spoke about and how music is so accessible, everybody's now being introduced to different genres or different subgenres of Latin music and are now discovering, oh, you know what? That's interesting. Like, I never heard that before, but that sounds pretty cool. And now my favorite artist is also collaborating with that artist. That's interesting. So it's becoming this blend of regions, and because of the genres and because of the artists of where they come from, that it truly is global in scale, and it continues to permeate across, not just here in the US, but outside of the US, right? I forget when it was, but it was a few years ago where like we heard that like Bad Bunny was trending in Sweden. And it's like, what do the Swedish know about Bad Bunny or Latin culture? But they know that they gravitate to that. There was something there that they, sought after, and therefore it expanded sort of the reach of Latin music in countries that generally don't maybe necessarily have that content or have that content in demand.
Absolutely. And it's even, like we said, with digital, those borders were just taken down. I remember, now here comes my age. I remember when salsa was all about the shows, and in the 70s, Fania was huge. And it wasn't about physical sales. It was about the shows. And it was in Africa. And then you had a salsa band in Japan with Orquesta La Luz. So, and that was without digital. That's when we needed to export our albums. Nowadays, when you look at some of these huge salsa artists like Ruben Blades, he plays all over the world, including Sweden. So before Bad Bunny. So now Bad Bunny has broken every model or every structure in the book, and that's out of the ordinary. But with that said, let's move into the next question. And this one I'm going to start with Alex. What is the most popular subgenre right now in the market, Latin, in the market, that you would say is the most popular one?
Well, according to Illuminate, there are different subgenres. You can see, like, for example, Música Mexicana, US regional music, is one of the fastest growing. But I would say, in my experience representing the artists I work with, we see a lot of reggaeton and just Latin trap, música urbana, so in the different variations. But the cultural footprint is that Latin music is evolving, and we have you could say that in the East Coast you can see more of like Latin pop and reggaeton, and then on the West Coast and even on the South you can see more of that US regional Mexican music making the sound. So I would say those are the two broad categories of subgenres in the Latin music.
I agree. And you know what? It was interesting because I worked for a long time with the tropical and the urban. And then I went to Univision, and I started working the Mexican. After I was a buyer. And for a period of time, reggaeton took over the marketplace, including your top charts of Spotify. But now Mexican came back. I think it's in cycles. Mexican, we got to be real. There's 129 million Mexicans. It's the largest country when it comes to population. My heart is Puerto Rican, but there's only 3.5 million people in Puerto Rico, and you want to add some of them. So Mexico is the dream for every music artist and every genre that we to break in that market because of the population, because of the masses. So, and then you transfer that to the immigrants there in the U.S. We know the majority are Mexican, so that's and that changes by area, but we still know the majority are Mexican. So that carries the Mexican category today. But the urban, it's led by one artist in particular, and followed by maybe a couple more, but still that one artist makes the numbers look even better. But yes. But there's still, just to close my side of that, this genre is happening. You have urban right now. You have I'm sorry. Right now you have the new, what is it, the slow beat reggaeton, which is not your typical. It's more like an R&B type of reggaeton. Urban that's happening, and that's your Afrobeat is huge. You got artists like Hamilton that are just blowing up, and just with I was just listening to the Viva Latino. 70% of that is sounded like Afrobeat. So music just keeps evolving. So with that said, let me move into a question for Anana. And we're going to move into our side. So we're looking this more of a purchasing side. How can managers better prepare the artists for monetization and back-end administration, even if they don't manage it themselves? Is it possible?
Yeah, I think it's possible for managers or even the artists themselves to manage their data. I would say the main thing that a lot of people lack is just kind of like that education or that conversation on what they should be keeping an eye on when it comes to like their metadata or just overall options. I think that's what's really missing is that conversation. If they feel like they really don't want to have to wear all the hats, because I know like managers already do enough and artists like they do everything. I definitely would recommend hiring a business manager or a lawyer, to kind of keep all that together to help with making money and keeping track of your money. That's the main two things you want to do, no matter, which level of artistry that you're in, the beginning, middle, or, you're kind of about to tap out or, get ready for a new album. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend, getting the right people in the right places to make sure you're monetizing correctly.
Okay. Alex, same question. This is it goes down your line with legal.
Yeah, I would say a lot of the time people think that catalog is this rocket science thing where you can start with a simple spreadsheet, putting each line, each one of your songs, of your releases, and make sure that you have all of the data that your distributor is gonna ask from you, and that it's the master side metadata. And then for the publishing side, you can also create something similar just with the ISWC instead of the ISRC and the writers and the publishers, and that comes out of your split sheet mainly, most of that information. And then with that, you have two spreadsheets, one for your sound recordings, one for your publishing, in the same Google Sheet or Excel or Notion or Airtable. And then you can just link the contracts for each of those songs. You can put that on your Google Drive, make a link, and then every time, when you go to Anana, if you at least have like, these are my 15, 20 songs, my releases, these are the contracts that are linked to those songs, then she can say, well, I'm only missing, one producer agreement, and we can move forward, right? That way, it's a very, down to earth thing that you can take and, act upon that. And that is your catalog. Eventually, it can be, a little more complex, but that's basically it.
Okay. This is I'm going to put a Rob and Zulma question. So I'll start with Zulma, ladies first. And a lot of people do not comprehend, and I know, Rob, you deal with the VEVO worldwide, so this will hit down your alley. is the strategy different in the artists from Mexico versus Puerto Rico, Colombia, Brazil? Is it important for an A&R to speak the same language? Zulma?
I think that there has to be definitely an understanding. Okay, Brazil, I think it's quite of an exception, right? Because they speak Portuguese, contrary to the rest of Latin America that predominantly speak Spanish, even though where they have many people that speak Spanish also in Brazil. But as an A&R, you definitely want to thrive and understand not only the language but also the regionalism of those artists that you are listening to, and those artists that you're trying to bring to sign or to bring to the professional side of the business. Puerto Rico, I mean, it's huge, establishing trends and actually innovating on, in A&R. I have to say, Mexico brings, a lot of opportunity, not only because of, the regional music and different other genres, because regional music is not the only genre that, Mexicans do, and they do great. So definitely, yes, it has to be. You have to understand the language, even when you're having artists from different countries collaborating with each other. It is always good when the A&R, at least if it is not a matter of language, it really has to be versed or really has to comprehend and understand the musical background of that artist that he's working with.
Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely, what was just already said, but also I think there's some similarities or things that wouldn't change so much by market, and that's the way the artist is utilizing the tools that are available to them, right? I think each market, although may be nuanced and different because of the language or the audiences or their fan base, I think the behavior that the artist can exercise will still remain very similar. And what that means is, okay, posting often and frequently on their social media to continue to highlight their music videos or their content that they want their fans to engage with, right? So I think that's something that can be shared across all the different territories, right? No matter how nuanced it is, but being able to constantly share and engage with their fan base. Another thing is, YouTube is a big part of our distribution strategy here at VEVO, and we know that YouTube does offer tools and analytics themselves that artists can log into and see how their content is performing, right? So like with music videos, one of the things that we suggest is not just drop a music video, but why don't you also try to make some additional content with that music video, right? Whether that's a lyric video or a live video or a behind the scenes video, for that video you just dropped. And there's so many different ways that, you can create much more content outside of just the music video that continues to, again, fulfill that engagement that they're looking for, and as a result, be able to monetize that content properly.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about catalogs and right administration. This is more on the Anana, Zulma, and Alex, and Rob and I would just learn. Okay, what makes a catalog truly buy ready for acquisition firms or investors? Is it just as important for indie artists and labels to have their metadata contracts, and we asked this question before, and royalties in order, even if they're planning to sell Anana?
Yeah, I would say for the first part, what makes a catalog ready? I would definitely say it's important to see the dollar age. Like, you want to see how your music is performing before you consider looking into the catalog space. And we want to see that as well as buyers and investors into the space. So we typically, look for the dollar age. I'm trying to think. I would also say just kind of like the impact of the works. I like to see, where has this song won awards? Are they on tour currently? Like, these are some of the things that we consider like who the artist is and what they have going on. And then also just got to make sure it's making money, you know. A lot of different firms have a lot of different requirements when it comes to their dollar minimum, you know, but you know, if it's making money and you feel like you're in a good place to do a catalog sell, that's basically what I would think as a seller. And then as a buyer, we also look for just the organization, kind of like we were talking about earlier, just like that metadata, just being together where we can actually keep track, because this is numbers, you know, it may be music, people may love it. They may, you know, it's their baby. I hear that all the time. But the main thing is, you know, we just have to see how it's really performing. And, you know, the hype can always be great, but it's all about the numbers when it really comes down to it.
And I will add to that. Usually, what everybody asks is 3 years, because you really want to know what have you done for the past 3 years. Because yes, if you're buying something, you got to see how it's going to be, and you have to find that plateau where that's what's
Trajectory.
so you need to make those. You need to have those numbers ready and available, because a lot of people say, "I want to sell my catalog," but you have no access to selling your catalog. So it's important that this is an Alexiomar question, and I'll start with Zulma. Ladies first again. What is the most common rights and royalties that go uncollected in Latin America, and how can an artist and label recover them?
Licenciado, voy a contestar la mitad y luego usted completa. I have to say, to start to backtrack a little bit, every time that you record a song, you create two different copyrights. And Alexio, you can correct me at any time. The first copyright is created with the underlying composition. It's within the underlying composition, and the record one, the second one is the recording, right? So those two types of copyrights generates different types of royalties, right? So I think that in Latin America, on both sides, on the underlying composition, which it would be on the publishing side, and also on the master side, everything is a little bit easier to get a little bit messed up because of the differences within every PRO on the performance side for the publishing side, and other societies that will collect on the master side. So that's why it is super important to have all works registered locally, even when you're thinking globally, as Robert, establish and set and give us that vision. Everything has to start by being recorded in your region, and from there taking over. Because yes, they performance rights, mechanical rights, printed royalties, or royalties from printed materials on the publishing side goes uncollected, and also neighboring rights on the master side, which are the most common uncollected ones. So Alexio, if you want to amplify.
Well, that was perfect. It's just, you have the digital mechanical royalties in the United States. A lot of people want to register with the MLC or want to register. They don't know if they should
with
register.
MCPS in the UK.
Exactly. So it's like there's a lot of places where it seems you can register, and if you are from Colombia or from Mexico, it's like, well, should I register both in my country and then in the US? And that confusion creates a huge leakage, right? Because it also depends on where people are listening your music from, right? If you don't have a fan base in the US, you're not generating possibly money on the US. So you should register in your local PRO or CMO, actually, because in Latin America, that is different from the US, where a lot of countries have collective management organizations. They collect both mechanical royalties and performance royalties, and that's different, right? So education, like Anana said earlier, it's one of the main things. You have to understand the two copyrights, like Zulma mentioned, and then start going from there. Like, okay, am I collecting with a little checklist all my performance royalties? Mechanicals, great. Syncs, okay. On the master side, you have the neighboring rights. That's also another one that on foreign digital radio and TV, even on theaters, right? There are some places that they pay performance royalties on that side as well. So you have to understand your local rights and then how it interacts with the US.
Perfect. This leads into our publishing questions, by the way, and we still have Zulma. So um, this is going to be an individual question. So, what is the biggest, Zulma? What is the biggest misunderstanding of Latin artists and songwriters they have about publishing, and how does that impact their income?
Well, I have to say that is a huge misunderstanding thinking that streaming platforms will pay all your royalties directly. And, with open distribution, I have seen many artists and authors that somehow they believe that their companies will automatically, the companies that they are using to distribute the music, that they automatically, with their payment, are including all the royalties. So it is important for everyone, getting into this business to at least, as Alexia said, take a little time to understand the basics. Because even when you have someone that you trust, taking charge and doing, the work for you, there is a lot of things that go under notice just because nobody was watching, what was registered, how those royalties are getting collected. I mean, a DSP will pay only on the recording side. All the royalties, like mechanicals and performances, will be paid by another societies, and that runs through a whole different system. So not because you maybe started with a company that will get you into or provide you of a publishing administration services means that everybody will do, and that is not something that happened automatically. So you have to keep in mind that the money that is not claimed will sit in there, and you might be ended up losing dollars every year because sometimes those royalties cannot be collected. So I would say that's a huge misunderstanding. Other thing, to the contrary, some other people misunderstood, and they believe that only by registering on a PRO they will collect all their publishing royalties. Again, the PRO under that copyright generated from the underlying composition will pay performance royalties, but you still have the mechanical royalties to collect, and also any other royalties that may arise from sync or other type of deals. So to understand what are you dealing with, or finding someone that can provide that information for you is the best thing that anybody could do.
That's key right there. Having someone that knows, or at least has an idea, help you. Absolutely. Alex, this one's for you. How do performance royalties work differently across countries in Latin America? I think Zulma answer a little bit of that. And where are they being left on the table?
So one little story that made me realize the money that is being left on the table is that I have some clients that they do concerts throughout Latin America. And the other day they sent me a screenshot, a photo of a paper where the producer of the event was asking for them to renounce to their right to collect performance royalties by not submitting set lists or cue sheets. And that was like, can we do this? And I was like, well, as an artist, you can decide whether you're gonna do that because that's a writer's right? Because the artist, the performer is different from the writer. In this case, at least legally, in this case, the person was both. So it's like, I'm gonna pay you as an artist for performing. I don't want to pay you also as a writer. So please sign this so we don't have to pay performance royalties. So money is being lost when people without the knowledge, they just sign stuff. At least they got me, but other people, they don't have lawyers. And they're losing money from set lists that aren't being submitted, or cue sheets that are incomplete, or even foreign repertoires that aren't properly registered or represented in other countries because they don't have a sub publisher or the infrastructure needed to collect globally. So I think that is one way people are leaving money on the table.
Okay. I'm going to ask the following question. I'll ask Anana and I'll ask everybody, the three legal guys that deal with publishing. What is the most important organizations and systems? This is like for anybody who will listen to us right here. What is the most important organization and systems that artists should register with? And what happens if they don't?
Every song I feel that needs to be, as I mentioned before, needs to be registered at least with the local PRO. And then, on the publishing side, you get a sub-publishing agreement or, a publisher administrator that can collect for you internationally. And so forth, on the master side, every record label, they have to be registered with Sound Exchange and get into, specific deals to collect their neighbor rights appropriately.
Anana?
Yeah, just piggying back off of that, definitely the PROs are extremely important. And then I also think it's important I've been pushing the MLC. People have been missing out on so much money, and MLC has definitely been helping people locate it. I've had sellers come to me like, hey, I swear I made all this money off of this song, but they just never really collected it. And MLC always point them in that direction to especially if you've been putting out music for a while and you're not collecting on it.
Alex?
Yeah, it's just doing a summary. Is like on the publishing side, if you're a songwriter, you need your PRO. That's your ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, or you have these other companies that are coming, that are up and coming. You also have the mechanical side, that would be the MLC. If you're outside of the US, then you would need a local CMO, collective management organization. Also in the US, you have the Harry Fox Agency for traditional mechanical royalties. And then on the master side, you have your distributor and also Sound Exchange. Sound Exchange has two type of registration. You have the rights owner. So if you have rights over your masters, that's one type of registration. And then you have the featured artist. So if you are a singer and you are the main performer on your song, you also have performing artists as a featured artist royalties. So that's important. And also if your music is in other countries, you have your neighboring rights, and like Zulma mentioned, in other countries. One maybe little tip is to have a publishing administration, because there are some royalties that you're not going to be able to collect directly. You would need a publisher, and having a sort of like DIY publishing admin. I won't give names just to avoid that, but there are some people out there that can help you collect globally.
Perfect. And so with that said, let me jump into some of the legal questions. Alex, you're going to be on Anana. It's about you guys now. How should an artist in Latin America think about representation, Alex? Is it worth pursuing legal or distribution support in the US, or should they focus regionally and support this first?
This morning, an artist from the Dominican Republic, she wrote me like, I want to hire you as my lawyer. And I was like, where are you at with your career right now? And she was on the beginning stage. And I was like, it doesn't make sense for you to hire me at this point, because it's too expensive. Not only without considering the conversion, right? The dollar conversion. So it's sometimes you can start with a local professional, obviously a music lawyer in your country, to help you organize, structure everything. And once you start to go global, or if you're getting, you're getting bigger and you want to go to the US, then maybe we can secure US counsel and representation here in the US, because it's gonna take a lot of money, and you have to invest, right? So I think that's a very down to earth and real answer. Of course, I would like you to hire US counsel, because then we're here, but the reality is money is a key thing, and also maybe it doesn't make sense if you're still singing around in local bars or local shows.
What are the key differences in copyright law and royalty windows between the US and Latin America?
I would say two practical ones. The first would be the US recognizes a termination right that allows authors to recapture certain grants after 35 years or so. So that is something that it happens in the US. Another thing is in the US you don't have strong moral rights. That's called the derecho de autor, and it comes from this European tradition or continental tradition of the author having a direct relationship with its creation. And that is something that, for example, in Colombia, the Dominican Republic, and other places, el derecho de autor, or moral right, it's you can't renounce that. So there are certain things about the structure and just the creative elements of a song that you will always have to ask the author, regardless if the actual copyright, the right to make copies and to make money out of creative stuff, it's, the publisher has it, right? And that's something that is very particular, because if you're doing a sync and I believe in independency, or I believe in X political element, and you're using my song for a sync that promotes certain political idea that I don't believe in, I can actually, even if I don't have the copyright and I have the moral right, I can actually block that in a way. So it can be, a little nightmare for monetization purposes. And although you can put anything on your contracts, that's one of the key differences in copyright in the US and in Latin America, that in the US, copyrights are just like at a financial asset. There's not so much of like a relationship between the author and its work. But in Latin America, things can be a little different.
Perfect. Okay, let's see, Anana, this is what challenges do buyers or distributors face when trying to engage with Brazilian catalogs on artists?
Yeah, I would say we looked at I worked on a couple of Brazilian catalogs, and I would say it's pretty much the same as when you look at any catalog, right? Like I think identifying the audience is about the same. We're going based off of the numbers that are coming in. So I wouldn't say there isn't any real big issues when it comes to it. If anything, I've run into some issues kind of like with agreements. I've noticed that there's a lot of like compilation music. So there's a lot of people on one song. So you'll have like one seller trying to sell, and they kind of, don't have all the agreements, or they won't have all the splits together. That's like one of the biggest problems I've ran into when I looked at Brazilian catalogs.
Now, Rob, this is V was huge on this. Why is Brazil often treated as its own ecosystem in the Latin music world? What makes it so structurally different?
Well, I think, if I don't lead with the language, it would be unfair to say that. I think language plays a big role in that strategy, and why they're sort of treated a little differently. Because, when we look at the analytics and, who's trending in Brazil versus who's trending globally, oftentimes, if not most of the times, you're always going to find artists who are either speak the Portuguese language or are from Brazil themselves, right? Like it's a very almost local ecosystem that they have there in that country, which kind of limits the extension beyond Brazil to be able to monetize outside of that region. So I think for Brazil, even though we know that the population is tremendous there's a whole lot of opportunity, and I remember listening to The Weeknd's album earlier this year, and he partnered with Anitta. Very strategic move. You know, Anitta is very popular in Brazil, and obviously The Weeknd wants to pull in a new audience catalog. But you do see that the language does play pretty much a pretty big factor in how, you know, it shaped the Brazilian marketplace that's different from the other ones. So yeah, that's sort of how we look at it. But like I said, you know, we have those insights and those analytics. So when we have brands who are coming to us in the Brazilian marketplace, you know, instead of like, let's say, offering Ariana Grande or Taylor Swift, let's say, we have a host of different artists who are actually trending much higher that can perform better for that specific campaign that they're looking for. Now, again, we'll still offer, you know, those artists that we have that may not be from Brazil or may not speak, you know, in Portuguese, and we'll still offer that. But our insights do tell us that it is very much a unique opportunity, but also a unique set of factors that are within, you know, that marketplace.
Yeah, they're almost like a closed type of thing. It's like a whole different world. And again, the number I have is 211 million. So it's like a whole little world on its own. So compared to what we said, 340 in the US, so it's nothing to throw away. So compared to us. So Alex, now here's a question for you regarding Brazil. How should US-based companies think about Brazil compared to the Spanish-speaking markets in terms of value, reach, and licensing complexity?
Well, short story, I was working with one of my clients. They're in the Christian music realm genre. And one of the things is that they've been doing a lot of collaborations with Brazilian artists because of the whole translation thing. So we are working with a lot of licensing stuff on, you know, approving the lyrics. And the thing is, some of their songs in Portuguese are bigger than their original songs in Spanish. So the reach and the value of those songs in that particular market, um, it's a huge opportunity for monetization, right? So you have to reach out or be open for these opportunities and create connections with lawyers and professionals in Brazil. And even don't be afraid to travel to Brazil. You need visas, so look for that. And then negotiate with them. And also, you can do that the other way around. If a song works in Brazil and you can translate that into Spanish or into English, then you can try that as well. I have some clients that are doing that, taking Brazilian artists and trying to recreate or say turn those products into products that the Spanish market or even the US market can consume. And because it already worked in Portuguese, you know, the probability of working it's a little bit higher than just trying a product from zero.
Yeah, I know that. It goes my age again. I remember Roberto Carlos, who's a huge Sony artist, and he was Brazilian, and he sang Portuguese and he translated to Spanish. And then you had Eros Ramazzotti, which did Italian, and Laura Pausini, and then they crossed over into the Latin because the languages are very similar. They're Latin languages, so there's that easiness. But it's easier for the Italians to do Spanish and the Portuguese to do Spanish, that the Spanish to do Portuguese and Italian. I think we have a challenge when we cross over the other way. But that way, they usually have a great opening. But well, yes, Brazil is a monster on its own. But yes, I think it's worth the challenge, like you said. But we got to get visas. So let's talk about monetization and marketing. And these are Rob questions. CPM and monetization vary by regions. What can Latin artists do to ensure their music is being consumed by one-tier geos, US and UK and Canada? These are like a VEVO type of thing.
Yep. So, you know, when artists partner with VEVO, we have our own built-in ecosystem as well of media distribution, like where our content gets distributed to. But not only that, we create products here at VEVO, such as editorial playlist or even original content opportunities that can raise the profile of the artist and their content within, our viewers that we have, on a monthly basis, which is about 140 million, on average on a monthly basis. So not small, but pretty robust, I would say. But by working with us, we do try to put that content as part of like our offering to our clients, right, as much as possible. Because that's our job, is to continue to monetize as much of that content as possible, right? I think also, I think I mentioned this before, but like utilizing tools that maybe YouTube has, like shorts and making various pieces, of content off of that one music video, lyric, live, extended cuts, etc., whatever that may be, will also help the artists ensure that like their music is being consumed in that tier 1 category. And again, I go back to also posting frequently, as much as possible to get that engagement with their viewers. Don't just, promote that music video once on your social media. Do it consistently over a period of time and just continue to engage and promote it yourselves. I mean, a lot of the times that's where the discovery comes from, from fans and viewers. It's through following their favorite artist on social media, and then they're talking about a release, and sure enough, they're going to link to it, or they're going to go and consume that content. It happens almost instantaneously. So I would say like those would be like the main factors that we would recommend as part of like the monetization strategy.
Perfect. Alex, what revenue strategies do you what revenue strategies are underutilized in the Latin artists today? Whether it's merchandising, ticketing, or direct to fan and e-commerce. You deal with a legal issue with that, but that gives you what do you think is the area that we're not, as Latin artists, we're not utilizing correctly to make money?
I would say that most Latin artists are still under index on ad supported video. So that is something that they need to diversify their income streams. And one of the things that us Latino are, it's fans. We're passionate about the things or the people we love, and the ideas we foster. And I would say that direct to fan bundles, memberships, even limited vinyls. A lot of people that buy vinyls, they don't even have a vinyl player. I saw that on one of Luminate's reports. So you can use that to create a connection with their super fans. Merch, obviously, and there are a lot of this direct to fan relationship models where you can actually monetize the people that support you. Concerts and all of that, it's part of that. But I would say direct to fan, it's a way for Latin artists to connect with their fans, passionate ones, and then go from there to bootstrap their own journey.
And I'll add to that from my side. And a little story is when at the beginning of the second generation reggaeton, which was with Wisin y Yandel, what was interesting was the fact that Bad Bunny has broken the model. Let's keep that the new generation. Yeah. But there was, when you would go to the concerts, there was no T-shirts. Unlike the American market, there was no T-shirts. And you couldn't find a T-shirt. And the ones they were selling, they were bootleg T-shirts on the street. So we see that wasn't making money out of those shirts. So, and we're talking quite a few years ago. Move forward, I think we're still behind when it comes down to that. It was interesting because I saw something on, it was CBS this morning. I thought CBS 60 Minutes, and we're looking at Dan Fogelberg. And I was watching it with my wife. And this is like an old timer. Dan Fogelberg, that's talking about his music, and I'm like, and my wife goes, "Well, we should get the CD," and I'm like, "I want the vinyl." I think the Latin side is missing it. We're there, but we're not 100% there. I'm a Fania fan, and I love to have more Fania shirts, but when you look for them in Amazon, you can't find them at Fania shirt unless you go to the Barrio in New York. And even then, so I think we're missing in the Latin culture. I think we're missing that added value again, let's keep Bad Bunny out of the equation. That's a totally different monkey. But in the big scope of things, it's not just about Bad Bunny. There's other artists and other genres that you want to hear. I think merchandising and being able to match that vinyl with that, even with the regional Mexican, I think the Mexicans with huge numbers like Un Grupo Firme, I don't think they have vinyl. And I haven't checked, but I don't think they're taking advantage of that side of the business. So my opinion is I think that we're leaving business on the table. But let's go to our closing questions. And I'm going to throw it out there to everybody. I'll start with Anana, the lady before the gentleman, and then we'll go to Alex and then Rob, and then I'll finish it up. If you were building a Latin label from scratch today, what are the 3 things you'll do differently based on everything you have learned over the past decade? Anana?
Yeah, if I was building a label, a Latin label, I would definitely, like you guys have been saying, focus on monetization, and making sure my data and my metadata is organized, for me to monetize correctly. Like I said, a lot of people leave the money on the table, just because of the lack of education and the lack of know-how. And I think that's really important. I think that would be like my main structure, and I would make sure I have a great team. Make sure people you can trust and people who actually know what they're doing, not just, your primo, from another city or something like that, who one time was, holding the bags.
That's the most common thing that happens in our world. Our cousin is running our business.
Yeah, so I definitely would look into that, and just make sure, you have all that together, because this is a business. And I've noticed that a lot of labels kind of fall because, it's a lot of favors and things like that. So organization is key to me.
Alex?
I would add to that automation, technology, and AI on the back end. I think there's a lot of, you can create systems and operation. And with that, you can automate a lot of, bookkeeping, P&Ls, financial statements, even contracts. There's a lot of things that you can actually automate, so you can focus on the music and on the marketing side. And with the monetization that Anana mentioned, you would have that flywheel of just create music, market, monetize, go again and again and again. And with all of that, you can have a dashboard with your data and make data-based decision instead of just going with your feeling, your guts only.
Rob?
Well, I would make sure I partner with a company like VEVO, to make sure that content that my artists are creating are being distributed globally. VEVO being available in over 55 countries worldwide and delivering 22 billion views per month on average, certainly gives the artist and their content a ton of exposure, that obviously we would want to make sure that they're being monetized properly. So I would say from that standpoint, that's where I would start. But also, music in general, I find it fascinating how it continues to evolve. There's never anything that sort of stands still. There's always new sounds, new artists, new blends of sounds. But I would also like to see, I guess, obviously taking advantage of the opportunities that are out there. You mentioned merchandising and technology and structure and all those things that everybody has mentioned here. But personally, I would love to see a little bit more of bringing it back to the roots, that some of the Latin artists are starting to do now, taking it back to salsa, and maybe in bachata, which Romeo Santos continues to do and dominate, which I love him for that. But I would love to see a little bit of a return back to those original roots of where the sound came from, to preserve the culture. And then from there, obviously, take it where you want to. But let's not forget about, the sounds and the rhythms that were born from Latin music. And let's return that back to the fans, which I know there's plenty of that still want that.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm one of them. I guess, when you listen to so much trap, and I'm a rapper, but this comes to a point where you can't listen to it with the kids. So it's a little too strong. But so I will add to the label side, because I've worked with a couple of new labels, so even today. I think knowledge, and a lot of people go in with the passion in the music. They go and they establish a label with the passion, especially Latinos do. Well, they have some money to spend, or maybe the parents of kids that want to be singers, and they have $100,000 to spend. But they go in and they get jaded, or they get lied to, or they're not informed correctly. And I'm going to tell a quick story about a promoter that came to me and he said, "JC, this radio guy asked, a marketing guy asked $50,000 for them to work this single. I'm not going to mention names. So for this duo, there was pop, and then they did a tropical version of it, but they weren't tropical; they were pop. But they made him do, and they spent $50,000. And I told the guy, I said, well, that's not the promoter, the guy that was selling him that the $50,000 plan. That's the artist, the guys who spent the $50,000. I don't blame the guy who's he's selling you. He didn't put a gun to your head. You trusted him. That's your mistake. And he sold you an opportunity. He's not an expert, but you should know better if you're going to spend $50,000 on something. And that happens every day. I've seen it for working with independents. I've seen millions of dollars lost or on a dream. Without, like Alex said, without a structure, without ideas, without knowledge. So I think if you're running your business, you have to start with, and sometimes even calling Alex, even though he's going to tell you may not be ready yet, but having that contact with a lawyer that you could maybe pay him for some questions, so you don't make those mistakes that they do in and out. And that's not just in Latin. I think in overall business music, it happens day in and day out. We hear a lot of stories like that in MTV backrooms and things that have happened to even big artists. Like, was it TLC? They never ended up owning their masters. So that happens in Latin every day. So, and this is the closing question. What does the next phase of Latin music dominance look like? From all rights, from the business, from the marketing side, from the legal side. And I'll start with Rob because he starts from him and I are the marketing side. So we'll start with the marketing side. How do you see Latin music continuing?
It's in such a good trend right now where it continues to rise. You mentioned at the very beginning that it's been the most profitable, for the past 7 years and growing. I forget what the exact number was in terms of revenue created, but I know it is one of the highest, if not the highest genre in terms of revenue for the labels. So I would like to, I love the new artists that are coming into the scene, but also the legends and the icons who are still relevant because they're either partnering together or they're still creating new music. So that's always good to see. So I would say, the safe answer would be yes, I would like to continue to see the trend that's happening now. But obviously evolution needs to happen. So utilizing more of the tools that are available, making sure that you're constantly in people's, inbox or faces or on their smartphones, right? Like the engagement of constantly being there present with them, because we know that the attention economy is here and everybody's fighting for people's attention. So continue to create content and release content and engage with your viewers. And I think all those things, I like the path that it's on, the blending and the collaboration that's happening. And so, yeah, more of that. And then let's see if there's new technology that's available that they can utilize. I know I didn't want to bring up AI, but perhaps there's something there for the artists to also leverage for themselves to continue to grow their careers and find a bigger footprint.
I'll go to Alex and I'll close it with Anana. So Alex?
I would say that we're going to see from the legal and business side, we're going to see more control of rights. For example, in my case, I've seen a trend when dealing with major labels that my artists are retaining their creative control, they're retaining their ownership, they're getting better terms in terms of percentages, shorter contracts. So that's great for the artist who sees himself or herself as an entrepreneur, because she or he can make better decisions. But it also means that you need to have more education and more business acumen, and have an actual team to make those better decisions as well. So I would say we're seeing more artists become music entrepreneurs, and labels becoming more of PEs, private equity, or even a little bit of venture capital. They have that vibe as well. So Latin artists are gonna be that, like startups. I believe that, and they're gonna, and that is the relationship we're gonna see between the artists and the labels, and I'm already seeing that trend. But that means that we're gonna have, a lot of teams working around with the bigger companies, and also that means more responsibility and even more innovation from the grassroots.
Anana?
Awesome. I would say for Latin artists, as a buyer, we look at catalogs that are a little bit older, at least 3 to 4 years older, and they've been continued to grow. Like when I first started doing this, the income was different. I want to say, the multiples we had to use to determine, the projection of a Latin catalog was different, than some of the other genres we were working with. And now I'm starting to see the projections kind of line up, So I'm excited for Latin artists to be able to have opportunities to have more opportunities to do catalog deals and be able to have conversations like this where there's presented with more options when it comes to making money, with their music. So I'm definitely seeing that. And the second thing I'm seeing is a lot of cross collaboration when it comes to genres. I was actually in Miami at the Latin Billboard Awards, and I was talking to the CEO of Billboard, Mike Van, and he was just saying like it's been like an onslaught of things that are kind of like running the Billboard chart has been, two genres, cross genres, and just really introducing new audiences to the music, and specifically talking about Latin music. I think that's going to just be a lot of growth and a lot of, like I said, opportunity for Latin artists to make money with their music.
And I totally agree. And I'll close it with the numbers I originally said. We said, what, 448 million Latin speaking between the U.S. and actually, no, south of the border, Mexico to Argentina. If we add the 65 from the U.S., I think we outdo the most of the American population. They're English speaking. There's an incredible collaborations like the person from Billboard told you. Yes, absolutely. I think this only growth, like Rob said. There's so much talent out there, and there's so much music. They use it's just amazing. It's just incredible. It's a wonderful time in the industry. You have your Bad Bunny doing his residency, and you know what? I'll close it with this one. One of the things that, and this is a guy that used to go to NORM, by the way, and actually probably none of you guys know what NORM is. So this is back in the day. We're talking maybe 20 years ago. So NORM was the National Association of Record Merchants. Now you don't have that anymore. You have Music Biz. And what's great is that now you go to Music Biz and you see somebody like Rimas. Back in the day, I was the Latin buyer for a chain. And my meetings were really small because I was 3% of the business. Now we're at 8% of the business. So I think we're growing at a fast pace, and it's amazing. It's just the future. I think Latin is the place to be. So,
sure.
guys, do we have anything else to contribute? I think we hit the mark. We're at the end.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the conversation. It's great to be here with all of you.
Same. Thank you.
Also, we love Alex. Also, thank you very much, and Zulma too. And we'll be around. Thank you so much, all.
Since 2018, Open on Sunday has provided catalog financing solutions for songwriters, record labels, producers, artists, and bands. We've purchased more than 100 catalogs during that time from notable names like blues legend B.B. King, Songwriters Hall of Fame inductee Liz Rose, R&B great Keith Sweat, and hip-hop icon Ghostface Killah. At Open on Sunday, we buy both publishing and master recordings of all sizes and genres and pride ourselves on efficiency and certainty of close. We also allow the seller the flexibility to structure their own deal. Rights holders can sell either all or a percentage of their catalog. And because we understand that music is personal, at Open on Sunday, we offer a unique buyback option, giving the seller peace of mind that they can always buy their catalog back down the road. So just how much is your catalog worth? Sign up now for a free valuation at openonsunday.com, your trusted partner in catalog finance.